Okay, right, folks. Welcome back to another episode of the Friel Goalkeeper podcast. Today we're joined by former Harps, Derry City, Institute, Letterkenny Rovers, and Buncrana Hearts. I think I've covered all the clubs there. And was it current Dubai Irish? Is that the current side you're playing with now, Rory?
That's the one. That's the one. Long
Perfect.
listener.
Yeah, well, listen, I've heard longer. I'm sure Tony Blake would give you a good run for your money there, when
Tony
it comes
rolls
to
out a
clubs.
scroll, doesn't he? He rolls out a
Aye,
scroll and keeps going.
that's it. So, no, listen, Rory Kelly, as I said, list off the clubs there, goalkeeper, former, I suppose, mentor of mine, if I could call you, was understudy to Rory for several years. At Letterkenny Rovers, and he taught me quite a bit. I learned quite a bit off him, so I thought it'd be no better man to get on for the next episode of the Friel Goalkeeper podcast than Rory. So, listen, Rory, really appreciate you agreeing to do this, and yeah, taking the time out of your busy Dubai life.
No bother at all, Sean. Look, I've been watching away at the episodes, and I suppose I was nearly feeling aggrieved that I wasn't getting the nod. Like, so whenever you bring Tony Blake on, I thought, surely I'm next in line.
Well, that's it, and listen, I know you live a busy lifestyle, Rory. So I just needed to make sure the timing was right to catch you at the right moment. So no, listen, we got it lined up, and yeah, should hopefully be a good episode, and I'm sure the listeners will take a lot away from it. So I touched on it a wee bit there, Rory. Why don't you just tell me? How's life at the minute? It's been a minute since we spoke. You're in Dubai at the minute. Why don't you maybe give the listeners an overview? Because I don't know, you live a bit of an unconventional lifestyle, as far as I can see, anyway. So, yeah.
To say the least, I would probably say. No, yeah, like I'm in Dubai the last year now. Made the jump last October, just after kind of being at home for a few years, like post COVID and stuff like that. I've always kind of had like a bit of a want to travel and stuff, and be based in different places. So I've done London for a while, I've done New York for a while, and then I just kind of felt if I had one more chance to do somewhere, I kind of looked at Dubai as being a place where there's a bit of opportunity here. Certainly now, whenever I've kind of shifted into like the working world more so as a freelance and as an independent kind of contractor, let's say, there's a lot of opportunity out here in my line of work. So I just thought now was the time, and so far so good a year in.
Yeah, excellent. And excuse me. So you're, to the best of my knowledge, Rory, you work in events and events management. Would that be accurate?
Yeah, everything to do with events. I think out here, like you're nearly worth your weight in gold. Like if you're a bit of a generalist, like if you can get across different areas of events, and thankfully, like I've been doing them for the last 8 or 9 years now, between like home and with different companies and stuff. So I think like having the opportunity to try it out here and explore different opportunities, like with live music, but then also with like corporate world, and then with other bits and pieces, it's kind of given me a real taste in that variety, and I've enjoyed it. Like I feel like it's a perfect time where it's starting to click. I always kind of said that I would give it 2 years. I'm a year in, and I'm looking at it going, I could stay here a while. Like so, thankfully, I took the advice off Mark Forker and Big Yank to kind of take the jump and try it out here, and so far so good. The events world out here is just mad because you have so much happening all the time,
Mm-hmm.
and the workforce isn't necessarily here. Like so, you could go to London and you go to New York, and you could be like one of 1,000 people going for a role, whereas you come here, you're one of a handful, and if you can kind of prove yourself over and over again, your quality of work and stuff, and thankfully I've been able to do that, and I've managed to get like nice contracts and kind of keep that freelance work going. So it was a bold decision to go freelance, but
Yeah.
I'm really pleased that I did.
Yeah, and this is something I'd be really interested to touch on deeper. So, you obviously don't, I think it would be maybe fair to say you don't do a typical 9 to 5, which makes, I suppose, balance in football even more difficult. And, from when we were playing together, some of the things the listeners will probably hear about in a minute, some of the I don't know, the travelling and commitments you had in football and outside of football, I could only imagine wasn't the easiest and probably was quite stressful at the best of times. What's that kind of look like for you now? We will go back a few years and touch on it, but now working in Dubai and in your line of work and then trying to balance football as well. What's that kind of look like for you?
Yeah, like it kind of comes down to contract by contract. Like you do have to treat it, you have to treat it on a gig by gig basis. I've been very fortunate so far in terms of the roles that I've got. Like a lot of them have been usually like day work in terms of preparation, and then whenever you get to the event, then your live days might be a maximum of 3 or 4 days. So you're never missing that much football. I'm at an age now as well. Like whenever like I still desperately want to play because like I'm sure we'll talk about it. Like, but the last few years, well, maybe not the last few years, but certainly the few years before that, like I feel like I missed out on a lot of football. And I'm 33 now, like so I want to try and make sure that I'm playing as much as I can, and with that as well, being able to balance that into that mix of the events world over here, it's been doable. Sometimes you do have to go away. Like I worked over in Doha for a while there last year, but you can't turn down the work. At the end of the day, the work is the thing that comes in. It's the work that keeps you here. It's the work that keeps the lights on, as a man says. So, balancing it can be challenging, but I think the more you get used to it, and the more you get used to the roles, and I think the longer terms of the roles as well, it kind of presents a few wee opportunities to actually have it your own way nearly in the evenings, like because I'm a firm believer like you get out what you put in, and I have no hesitation getting up at 7 in the morning or getting online at 7 in the morning and starting work just so I can make up a couple of hours in the evening. And thankfully it's been it's been fruitful so far that way. So far, so good. It's a little bit tough. As you probably know, Sean, I'm a man that tries not to get stressed about too much. Like any more laid back, I'm lying down. Like so, try to just kind of keep it all level enough.
Yeah, no, that's it. And I think too, another sort of interesting challenge too, the nature of the position, being a goalkeeper, it doesn't really lend itself to playing 1 week and then you do need that continuity within the position. So that's something maybe outfielders or people who don't play in goal maybe don't quite maybe understand, that there is maybe another level of commitment required from goalkeepers because of that continuity required within the position. So just touching again on football in Dubai, a friend of mine is living out in Dubai playing a little bit of football, and he's saying this to Stamps. Yesterday he was playing Sunday League with Buncrana Hearts and a couple of other. You haven't crossed paths or no names to drop?
No, well, like it's mad, like because I only signed last January, so I came out in October, but I couldn't sign because of the transfer window. But like we were playing against teams that had like players that would have played English Championship. A couple of players that played in the Premier League. Jamie Ward that played for Northern Ireland at the Euros. He's playing for a team out here, and then the same club this year have gone and signed the likes of Rafael Morrison and Harry Arder, like, and they're the kind of players that we would have crossed paths with, just in terms of our division. But like last year, like Andres Iniesta, one of the best players to ever play the game, like he was playing in the top tier here. Paco Alcacer, who won a few Euros with Spain as well, he was playing out here. And like it seems to be one of these places where players come, maybe not to the level of like a Saudi where the payday is really big and everything else, but it's a great life out here. Like the weather's good. I'm sure the money's good at that level. It's not good at this level, but it's one of those things where a lot of players are drawn to here as they go through their careers anyway. In terms of training camps, like you hear about Rashford being out here quite a lot in terms of the off season whenever he's been left out of England squads and stuff, and you're looking at that saying there's obviously the facilities, and I think like Dubai kind of gears itself towards that. But like you don't know who you're going to come across. Like that's you see these tournaments and you see these people popping up and you're like, what is happening here? Like why is he there? Or
Yeah.
playing against the Ravel Morrison, and you're looking going, this is bizarre. Like, but it kind of lends itself to what Dubai is. It's that place that it's so out there. It's if you asked me 2 or 3 years ago, would it be a place I would ever have gone to, I would have said absolutely no chance. But whenever opportunity arises, you kind of have to grab it, you know.
Yeah, well, that's it. Yeah, it's people always touch upon the glamorous lifestyle that comes with it, but I don't think you'll see Andres Iniesta or Ravel Morrison going down to the likes of Culdaff or Glengad for a pre-season tour or even a kickabout. So, but there you go. So. Listen, Rory, just before you went to Dubai, you were with Harps. I know a little bit about your career. I know it was your long-term ambition, long-term dream to play senior football. You had quite a number of setbacks leading up to that. The opportunity came around. You had a short-term sort of stint with Harps at that time before you made the move to Dubai. You just want to give the listeners a bit of insight into that, because you had those setbacks and you finally got that opportunity to become an established senior goalkeeper. Some insight into that would be really beneficial, I think.
Yeah, I suppose like the opportunity to go back to Harps was. I never seen it coming, to be honest with you. Like I kind of resorted to the fact that I was work first and football second. Once I hit kind of 30, and I was very, very lucky to go back home for the first time in 15 years. I think it was the first time I went back to play for Buncrana Hearts, and well, maybe not the first time. I actually had a stint in between there for a season, but I always kind of had the ambition to go up and to play as high as I could, and if that was intermediate football at Letterkenny, if that was Irish League for Institute, whoever it was, like I always kind of had that opportunity or that ambition. And the Harps one came out of nowhere. Like I just finished the season in the National League with Buncrana Hearts. We won our first league in 30 years. I think in the space of a year, about 14 months, I think we picked up about five or six trophies, and there was a lovely feel around the town, and there was a lovely feel around the club. And like for a town that's so ingrained with football, like between Buncrana and Cockhill, like seeing that success, say at Ulster Senior League level for Cockhill, and then seeing Buncrana and actually put together like a bit of an atmosphere and a real structure in the club, like I kind of wanted to be part of that. And it worked for me. Like it worked for my work. I was working from home at the time, and I was getting to play with my best mates. Like that was the big thing. Like I hadn't done that, obviously, no more than yourself. Like you end up forging friendships as you go on through your career. Like, but ultimately, like 2 of my best mates since I was a kid were playing with Buncrana Hearts. We kind of went back, and it made it really special then whenever we were doing well. So like that season, like I think we let in 4 goals in the whole league campaign. We ran away with the league. We had a nice run in the Junior Cup, which was unheard of for the club. And then Harps came calling, and I was a bit like, are you sure that's the right number? Like, because I haven't been up there. Like it'd been 10 years since I was at Harps, and I know Murph from whenever I was leaving Derry City years ago, and he asked me about coming down to the likes of Dungannon, I think it was at the time, and that didn't work. But this time I had a good feeling about it, just in terms of trying it, a bit more mature, a lot of games under my belt, and just in a different place, mentally, physically, age-wise, just totally in a different place. And I said to myself, fuck it, I'll go up and I'll give it a go. Really, really glad that I did. It was challenging. I think we had a tough spell. Dave Rogers, I know that he divided opinion quite a lot up there, but for me, I really like Dave. I think Dave kind of turned to myself and he turned to Tony McNamee and as like older boys in the squad that could maybe try and lend a little bit of guidance or even like a little bit of mentorship almost to some of the younger boys. And unfortunately, like, it was really difficult at the end of the season for myself. I was dipped in and out of teams just because the commitment on my side, I had already all this stuff booked. Like, I had Dubai booked for the end of August. I really wanted to be part of Harps, so I pushed it until October. I had like different trips and stuff, and you're trying to then make sure that you're still giving that commitment to the football, and just to get that opportunity to go back to Balbuffet and play for Harps and actually see some of the people that were still there whenever I was there the first time. And it was special. Like, even though results didn't go our way, I think the biggest one for me was the night we played St Pat's in the FAI Cup, and we gave them as good as we got. Like, on a personal level, I feel that I probably could have done a wee bit better later in the game. Like, I think with the second goal, that's probably my biggest kind of like what if moment for that whole spell. But no regrets going back to it. Loved every minute going back to it, and I think had I stayed at home, I'd like to think that Murph would have seen some kind of role for me there, maybe just as a backup goalkeeper and like a senior member around the squad. But really, really pleased to actually get that opportunity again, and loved not every minute of it.
Yeah.
Didn't like sitting on the bench, didn't like letting in goals, but certainly I loved the majority of it, and just getting around the characters around the place again. And those late trips up to Balbuffet and late trips home, they were something I relished. Like, even for those few months,
You also it, yeah, and no, I think it's interesting to hear there. You obviously had those other outside commitments long term. Did that conversation look like, listen, Rory, come in, we need a goalkeeper, someone steady the ship for a couple of months, and you were happy to play that part? Or was there, how did that look like?
Yeah, it wasn't so much like steady the ship, because Tim Heimer is a good buddy of mine. Like, Tim was doing well and Tim was playing well, and he was like, Tim was just injured. Tim was injured like for weeks on end, and in fairness to Dave and to Murph, it's a lot of responsibility to put on young shoulders. And I think Oisín Cooney at the time, like, Oisín was only 16, and I think, like, whenever you've so much riding on games, be it cup games where you're playing lower opposition, like, the last thing you want there is to put like pressure on a 16-year-old goalkeeper. It's different out the field. You can bring a 16, 17-year-old on and let them run free and kind of give them that bit of freedom to do it. For a goalkeeper, as you know, Sean, like, it's a different kettle of fish. And I think, like, that was the pitch to me. It was like, look, Tim might need surgery here, right? And you're local, you have a connection with the club already, most of the boys there, and there's a good level of respect for me there. And in fairness, I like, if I didn't go for it, I would have kicked myself, because I'd had such a good season and I had such a nice return back home to play, where I thought to myself, geez, Rory, like, this is probably going to be your last chance to actually give senior football in Ireland another crack. Like, I was glad I did it. Grateful to Dave and to Murph for kind of bringing me in the mix, and obviously the other commitments I couldn't do anything about them. I think they were taking priority, but certainly I tried to make it work. The guys were as flexible as they could be with me. They did, like I was out of the team anytime I came back from something, and then I was quickly back into it, which I felt like, again, I kind of owed them something by the end of it. And listen, it's one of those where I'll I'll look back and say I was delighted to have got the chance to go back, and results just didn't go our way. It was a disappointing finish to the season, but you can see what Murph was doing there. Certainly whenever he was taking over towards the end, he was trying to kind of instill that little bit of freedom among the boys, and he reinforced it. Like, I think Dave, one of his masterstrokes was bringing in Tony McNamee, and Tony's a man that gets it. Like, Tony, he understands the club, he understands the area, and I think boys feed off that as well. Lads that weren't from Donegal, they feed off Tony, and anybody that knows Tony knows he's as odd as anything. Like, but he's around like him. We're teammates going back again 15 years or so. Like, so it's kind of recognising whenever you need a bit of seniority or a bit of experience just in the mix of that, just to help you know, with something with the young lads. And I think that's probably where the pitch was more than anything.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, no, fair enough. And, you know, I just want to touch on maybe, you know, I suppose your experience with senior football. You, again, to the best of my knowledge, you'd actually signed with Institute just pre or post pandemic, around that era. And then you had made the commitment to Buncrana Hearts. And I suppose maybe you touched on it there a little bit. You thought perhaps that opportunity to play senior football had sort of came and went, essentially. Do you want to just talk about your experience with senior football, maybe give the listeners an insight, and maybe touch on, because I know you've had a lot of setbacks, how you've been able to come back, and sort of, you know, how your relationship with football has been maybe impacted, or how some of the issues you've dealt with in that regard.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so like, I think I played my first senior game whenever I was 14. Like, goalkeepers at a premium, like,
Yeah.
you know, and whenever you're showing a little bit of development in terms of height or anything, like, you tend to just get thrown in. Like, so I was kind of thrown into like a really strong Ulster Senior League whenever I was 14, 15, and that kind of just bedded me into that. Like, that's all I wanted to play. I wanted to play against big players. I wanted to play against guys that had 300-400 games under their belts for Finn Harps, like boys that I used to watch, like, and doing that every week. Then I think you don't notice it, but you kind of become like, I felt anyway, like I just became better and better and better and better the more I was playing at a senior level, even at that age. And I got the chance to sign with Derry City. I had a good foil cup with Derry City, and a few months later, like, I ended up just sticking with Buncrana Hearts during that window then, because we were going all right at the time in the Ulster Senior League under a great man, Brendan Crummy, God rest him. But I eventually I signed with Derry the year after they got relegated, or the year they got relegated, basically. Stephen Kenny was in the first division. He had to build like a whole club essentially from the ground up, and I was very fortunate. Like, he asked me in. To me, that was like a real endorsement at the time, because I did feel that I was in a really good place as a player. I spent 2 years full time there, partnered it with studies in the college in Derry. And I loved it. Like, for the most part, I loved the fact that I was like a footballer. Do you know what I mean? I was training every day. I was eating really well. I was taking it so seriously. And I think, going back to the point that I made earlier about whenever I went back to Harps the second time, I was a bit more mature. I think that's probably what held me back a bit whenever I was younger. Like, I was behind the best keeper in the country at the time. Like, Jared Doherty was there, and then Studs, Eugene Ferry was there as the number 2, and Eugene was flying in and out and stuff. And I think, like, even being exposed to these players again that I was watching every week, I think my mentality shifted a bit in terms of going, I deserve to be here, to almost having like imposter syndrome then for a year. Like, and to be honest, like, I wouldn't have stuck at it so long had I not had a couple of friends in the changing room. And the second year, so we got promoted in the first year, and there's like a wee gem that I'll always hold on to, was that like at the start of the second season, whenever we were just promoted, I'd done reasonably well in pre-season. Like at whatever time or whatever minutes I played, I felt I'd done all right. But again, I was kind of in and out of squads. I was back up. If Studs couldn't make it back, I was in as number 2, all that kind of stuff. And like there was a touch of class from Stephen in the middle of all that, where he handed me my first division medal, and to me, like, that was like a real kind of, even though I hadn't played, like I'd been around squads and I'd travelled the length and breadth of the country to sit on a bench, as we've all done at one stage or another. Like, but for him to kind of give me that, and he said to me, "Rory, you deserve that." I kind of felt at that time, I was like, wow, like that was worth it. And then unfortunately, just the second year, I kind of fell out of love with it a bit. I had a few setbacks mentally. I wasn't really in a good place. I found it really, really difficult, and I was trying to keep myself at it, and I couldn't. Like I was fighting a battle myself every day, and I ended up then kind of focusing my energy from what should have been on the pitch. I ended up doing it in the classroom instead, like, and really focusing on my course at the time, and that showed. Like, it showed to everybody at the club. But I was losing real. I don't know. I felt like I was losing the love for it, and you can't afford to do that. Like, you have to be, whenever you're in that environment, I feel you have to have a certain mentality, and I didn't have it. I think the imposter syndrome was creeping in more and more, like, because these are players that, as I said, look, I would have looked up to, and I would have thought, wow, like, I'm playing with Mark Farren, and then I'm sitting in the car with him. He's dropping me off to Bridgend to get a lift, like, and you're kind of there going, Rory, like, you're not good enough to be here, man. And eventually, then that's whenever my thoughts shifted towards going to university, and I broke the news to Stephen in August. I kept, like, my university applications and all very quiet at the time. But I asked him for a meeting. I went in and I sat down, and I go, look, I've been offered a place to go to university in Liverpool. And he said to me, and he goes, well, you can't go. I was like, well, I kind of have to. So he was great about it, like, in fairness. And I do have to hold my hands up, like, where I got virtually no action on the pitch, but in terms of how I was treated during them by the likes of Stephen. Like, Stephen noticed whenever I was going through tough spells, and one particular spell, like, which was, I was probably very close to just jacking it in, but he called me in and he says, look, go take a week off, just get away from football, don't think about it, don't talk about it, don't watch it, don't think you have to come to training, don't think you're letting anybody down. And it was the best thing I ever did, because it allowed me to kind of just switch off from it for a week, then go back, finish the season to the point where I could. And I think my last game in Derry City colours was the AA Championship final, which was the last edition of that. We beat UCD in the final, and, like, that's a really special moment for me, looking back on whatever of a career that I've had. Was like Mark Farren scored in that game. Me and Mark ended up being good pals. By the end of the season, I got to play with, like, some of my closest friends at the time, and that, like Tommy McMonigal, Sean McColgan, like, boys like that I'd kind of grown up playing with and playing against, and, like, that was really class. And then I set off to Liverpool, got a phone call a few months later to go back to Harps to dig them out, and it was always start, like, stop, start. It was always that, and I feel that I kind of got to a point where I just lost the want for that. I just wanted to go somewhere then where I could play and I could enjoy it. And, you know, after half a season or 2 seasons of Harps, half a season at Institute, I just thought, nah, I'm done with trying to chase it. And this was me only 23, I think, at the time, 23, 24. I was just done with trying to chase it. and I think that probably led to my favourite time in football, which was with yourself and with all the boys at Letterkenny.
Yeah. Yeah, and it's really, really interesting there, I suppose, to get an insight into some of the, I suppose, challenges that come with being a senior footballer and that imposter syndrome, which, I suppose natural enough when you look up maybe to other lads, I suppose, but you were obviously grew up a League of Ireland fan. I think you were Finn Harps, and then you probably leaned more towards Derry City as you went in and played there. But I know playing with other lads, Rita Bradley, Kevin McHugh, you grow up idolising these lads, and to be playing with them is a great honour. But that imposter syndrome is something that definitely impacts lads who are big League of Ireland fans, especially. We will touch on Letterkenny Rovers as well. How was it with Jared Doherty? Probably, arguably, the best goalkeeper in the League of Ireland the last 20 years. Something that always impressed me when we were training together, you had really, really high standards, not just for game day, but obviously training, pre-match, post-match. Did Ger have any knock-on effect from you in that, or how was the experience working with such a top-class goalkeeper such as himself?
Yeah, like I think day in day out, like if you're working with someone like Jared, you're always learning. Like I wash my gloves the way Jared used to wash his gloves, because I seen him do it one day. I was like, fuck, that's how I need to wash my gloves, and I still do that. Like I'm 33 and I'm still doing that. And like me and Jared, I think I kind of went in all starry-eyed with it. I was like, right, I'm going to learn so much off Jared Doherty, and I did that. Like that first year, I think it instilled that kind of level of standards in training. And Jared never ranted or raved really. Like he just held himself so high, like in terms of how he trained, his approach to it and everything. And I think the first year was class. Like we were going for the league. There was me and Jared would have roomed together a few times and stuff, like if we were away down the country and stuff, and I felt like we got on really well. And then to me, then I think my second season, I didn't feel then that I think the imposter syndrome probably creeped in a wee bit with how I performed in training a bit, and I think that ended up kind of being a little bit fractious in with Jared, because the standards were so high. Do you know what I mean? And I would openly say that by the end of it, like I didn't like going to training. I didn't like going to training. Like I was still learning off Jared. I was still watching him, like hawk-eyed nearly in training and trying to pick up wee things. But in terms of actually having that level of like, I don't know, level of want to be there and train with him every day, I kind of lost that. And I would say that by the end of it, I was probably glad to get away from it, to be honest with you. And that was training with Jared and training with the whole team. Like, because I was fortunate. Look, I had two coaches with Derry City at the time doing the goalkeeping, and Brian Hutchison, he was great. Like, because Hutchie seen myself and Jared and Studs, we were all different personalities, and like I would have leaned more towards Studs. Studs would have been like a big brother in there. He would have looked after me. He would have been always like, kind of, don't worry about that, don't worry about that. No, whereas Jared was just so focused and so laser focused on himself, which he needs to be, because he was the best keeper in the country. But I kind of felt that, I don't know, again, this is going back 15 years, like or whatever, 12 years, I nearly felt that by the end of it I was a bit of a hindrance in there. So by the time I got away from it, it was nearly like I breathed a sigh of relief, to be honest with you. And that wasn't just that situation. I think it was just a wider piece of actually being in full-time football, being a senior footballer. But definitely, like I still have to say, like the amount that I learned from him, and the amount of, even the way that I try to carry myself in training now, I still do that. I still fall out with people in training if I don't think their standards are high. I still call people out. I'll still have a go at people, and that's what Jared did. That's what Jared did. Like, if he felt like someone didn't have their standards to a certain level, he called them out, and that's something I think that's kind of stuck with me. But yeah, it had its ups and downs.
Yeah. Okay. Interesting. I'll not try and open up too many more old
Give me a
wins,
dollar.
but yeah. Well, I don't want to get you getting cancelled out there in Dubai, you know. But listen, let's touch upon some more, I suppose, happy memories, positive stuff. You spoke there about going to Letterkenny Rovers. Your best time in football, your happiest time in football. Something I suppose was reflected, and the listeners will find out now. Some of the travelling you were doing just to play football for the love of it. Essentially, it wasn't much financial return. Talk about your Letterkenny Rovers experience. You were there, what, 6 years? Would I be right in saying a bit more than that?
Something like that.
Something, give or take,
Yeah,
anyways.
like,
Uh,
that came around. That was mad how that came around. Like, I was at Institute and played a couple of games. Felt I did well in games, like, at Institute, but ultimately, like, it's the same as anything. Like, if a manager is there and he has his favourites, that's fine. Like, I'm a big boy, I can deal with that. But at the time, Eric White was covering Institute games on a Saturday afternoon. Like, and I didn't really know Eric that well. I would have known him to see and everything else, but he sent me a message saying, "Look, I know the situation. This was coming up to Christmas." He was like, "I know the situation's probably not looking good for you at the minute and everything." And he was right, like, because no matter how well I was training, no matter how well I played, whenever I was in the team, you always, like, you were one. I felt, I know, you're one kick out, putting it out of play from being dropped out of the team, like, and I kind of played with that pressure on me, and I didn't know how to cope with it that well. So whenever Eric kind of offered me that way out of that, the alternative was like a move into, like, the intermediate league in the north, and I had no interest in that. Like, I thought Letterkenny, I played against Letterkenny, lost many a game against Letterkenny, had Macca throwing me around goal mouths whenever I was about 14 or 15, like, and I kind of looked at it saying, let's give it a go, like, even if it's for a year. So at the time I was working at home, and then within a couple of years I got a job in London, with Platinum One as a football agency. So that was like a real kind of full circle moment for me, going from being a player to going into that world where you could help advise younger players based on your own experiences and stuff. So at the time, like, I went in and I was training with a couple of clubs in the UK, and I didn't really. I kind of had this real want to. I keep saying that, like, about a want, like, but I did. Like, I had a real want to kind of stick with Letterkenny just because of the relationships that I built up in those opening 2 seasons, like, and thankfully I did, like, and it's openly my favourite time in football, like, seeing what it meant to people. Like, that's what football should mean to people. Do you know what I mean? It's not about money. It's not about, like, on that kind of local level and all. And people will nod towards how money ruined the Ulster Senior League and everything else, like, but money didn't ruin the Ulster Senior League. A lack of interest in things like immigration and stuff like that ruined the Ulster Senior League, like. But with Letterkenny, it was more, you're looking around at the same characters every week, and that to me made it really easy to fly back, like. Club helped me out in terms of, like, getting me back for games and stuff, and it was because at the time I thought of yourself, and I was kind of going, poor Sean's playing league games and I'm bloody coming in and I'm doing this or I'm doing that, like, and that's why then I had to make sure that anytime I did come back, I was on my game. So that's, like, I looked after myself as much of a professional as I could in London. I think I was running about 5Ks a week or something, just stupid stuff, considering I hate running, like. But, like, that kind of thing where I was like, if I'm going home to play for Letterkenny, like, I need to be totally at it. Like, and I think that kind of coincided then with those kind of memorable years that we had. Like, and it's, as I said, look, it was the most enjoyable time I had, and getting to just build up relationships with people like Eric I mentioned, like then the boys that are gone now, like, do you know what I mean, like Big P and Kieran McGrath and even the likes of Eamon as a manager. Like, I loved Eamon to bits. Like most people, I'm sure Eamon's not revered in football circles by many people that have come up against him, but as a manager, like, and as a person, top class. Like I would have met Eamon out in Portugal on holidays, and we go for breakfast and we'll catch up and stuff. And like, it's those relationships that you'll take away from your football career, and they're the ones that I look back on saying, geez, I'm so glad that I did that. Like, I'm so glad I kind of stuck to it. And you know, you build up relationships for life, and obviously, like, your life goes different ways and everything, which mine has and which other people have. But like Mickey Duffy, Anthony Gorman, Eamon, Barkley, Tony, like, just great people that you want to be around. And then that's not to mention like the raft of players that we played with as well. Like, that's big days and some not so big days, but that's definitely my fondest time playing anyway.
Yeah, no, listen, I think there was definitely a fantastic changing room there, and I think I actually think I remember you saying something about that. You've never seen a club with as many kitmen, you know, and those lads though were there every week, and you know, special mention to Big P and Kieran McGrath, may they rest in peace, and then, as you say, the players and the characters, lads who'd been there, like the likes of Maka and Forker and Big Yank, did their couple of years, and then Eamon or whoever used to bring in these, I don't know, these characters from here, there, and everywhere, play a game or two, and then you wouldn't see them again. Probably take a bit of kit with them as well. So, yeah, but we definitely.
In fairness, like, I have to give it to him, and like, see, for every player that he brought in that didn't work out, like, he brought in 3 players that did. Do you know what I mean? Like, because I remember, like, my first game shot, I went down to
Swilly Rovers.
Swilly Rovers.
Oh, I remember that. I was going to bring that up.
I led in 5 in my first game, and I remember going home, and my dad goes to me, how'd you get on? And I was like, do you think? I think I'm done, you know. I think I'm finished with football after letting in 5. But like, I remember then, like, kind of getting to grips with it, like, and even at the time we had, like, who was playing? I don't even read it was there, but like, I think John Dock was there and different players.
John Dock, yeah.
Were there, and I don't know what it was, but I was like, right, well, if I've started this badly, surely the only way is up. Like,
it's up, that's it.
Thankfully, it kind of went that way. Like, and we didn't manage to win the ones that we wanted to win, but we did have some amazing days. Like, and as I said, like, I have friendships for life out of that. Like, I was out in Italy last year, Shovy's wedding. I was out in America the year before, Paul McVeigh's wedding. Paul's after having his first kid. I was out with him there a few weeks ago in New York. Like, and they're really, really special relationships. Forks, as I mentioned, Forks is a friend for life. Yank's a friend for life. Like, and there are those things that you take away, and they're far more valuable than any matches that you won or lost at Lakeview. Like, do you know what I mean? And that's the way I kind of, I suppose, put it into perspective now in my old age, you know.
Yeah, well, that's it. And I think at that time the league title sort of, it was always within grasp, but Cockhill, of course, have had such longevity at sort of intermediate and now junior football. It was just unfortunate that it didn't quite come off for Letterkenny at the time. But something that felt like a win was probably, you know, something that only a handful of players have done, is to play in the Aviva. That whole year, those trips down to Cork, Dublin, the Aviva, of course, you know, not as good on the day. The result wasn't quite what we were looking for, but that experience was unbelievable. I know from sitting on the bench. It's something I'll never forget. How was it from your perspective, Rory? Sort of the overview of that season, and of course that big day down in Dublin.
Yeah, you can't compare it. Like it's like I would go to the Aviva every Ireland game. Do you know what I mean? I'd be there all the time, and even like my favorite memory out of all that, it wasn't anything to do with actually the day of the preparation or anything. It was actually winning the semi-final up at Lakeview, because like you felt then how important it was to people, and you see like boys like Mickey Duffy, and they're hugging each other and they're embracing, and you're seeing tears in their eyes, and you're kind of going, geez, we've helped this happen, like, and that was far more important to me. Like, I think the experience of the Aviva itself, like the first 20 minutes was amazing, honestly. Like even just stroking a ball out to your fullback on that pitch, few hundred people at the game, if like if anything, but like that whole experience right up until the goal started going in, I feel like the build up and all was class. Like I came back from London a few days before, and it was it was mad. Like you could feel the buzz around the place, and even for me, not being from Letterkenny and being from Buncrana, you were getting people wishing you luck. You were in the town and people were saying, big one this weekend and stuff, and like Buncrana, being from Buncrana, I know that like whenever I was younger, we hated everybody. We hated all the teams they were playing against. So to have people actually wishing you luck and all whenever you're playing for a team other than your hometown, like I felt that was really, really nice. Like, and just to share it, the experience. I remember the night of the final. So obviously afterwards we went back to the hotel and everything else, and I just went up to my room, like, and I couldn't face anybody. I didn't want to face anybody, and then I kind of had this realization where I was like, right, we're after getting tanked here, but like that was so much achievement to get there. So I just said, bit my bottom lip, said right, go down, sat with my family for a while, and just kind of shared whatever sorrow that I had with them on the day, and then sure we were back in action a couple of days later in the FAI Cup, and like that was that story of that season. It was just relentless. Like it was Cork, it was Dublin, it was Dublin again, it was Dublin again, and like then we were playing like the first round of the FAI Cup. We played like I think it was Portmarnock.
That's right, yeah.
Played Athlone Town. We drew with them down there. We took them to the last minute of extra time at Lakeview. Like I remember that game was the maddest game out of them all, because I had been back. I had to go back to London for work. Had to go back. I had this big bloody meeting thing, and I remember sitting looking at the clock going, I need to get my skates on here. Like, so at about 1 o'clock, taking off, gone to the airport, and it's one of them funny stories that you hold on to forever. Like, but Eamon had arranged one of his ex-Garda buddies to come up and get me at Belfast Airport, and I've never been in a car like it. Honestly, like,
Yeah.
you wouldn't have had a look into it. I was flying in and out of the lanes, and I got in the door. I got in the gate at Lakeview at 5-6.
That's right.
Kickoff, and I felt I played well that day. I think I was just running on adrenaline. But it was one of those games where, again, you look back on, you say, what might have been. Obviously, it was only the first or second round or whatever. Like, but it was a special day as well. Like, just seeing that crowd at Lakeview, especially after the Aviva and after that disappointment, to see that crowd there and the interest in it, it was massive. Like.
Yeah, well, from my perspective that day, I remember, obviously, Eamon had named the team probably an hour before kickoff, but I've went and did the warm-up with Tony Blake, and the clocks counting down and getting closer and closer, and then, as you say, I remember you coming in at about, it was 5-6. I remember thinking, though, probably around 10-6, I was like, if he's not here, I'm going to have to start. Maybe that's the best case scenario. Would have got 10 minutes, but before you had arrived. But I remember that well now. Just looking at the time and thinking, oh, I'm going to have to start, you know. So my shift, or my mindset had to shift in that regard. But yeah, unbelievable, unbelievable days and unbelievable occasions. So listen, I'll not keep you too much longer, Rory. But I will ask you this, and I'm going to come back to a question I had in my mind at the start. What's a bigger highlight? Maybe it's a silly question asking, but that big day in the Aviva or one in the league with Buncrana Hearts.
I think if the day in the Aviva had gone better, that might have been it. But like honestly, like just winning the league unbeaten with Buncrana, and like my dad was down at that match. My mum was up watching the match. Like that was special. Like because it's it's where I grew up. Like it's where I grew up playing. It's the colours. It's like I remember being like 13, 14, 15, and just being Buncrana Hearts stupid in my head. Like I was just all about the club. Like and like that the club had gone through a tough enough time as well that year. Like losing big figures like Derek Smith, and Derek was my next door neighbour, and like to be able to kind of bring some. I keep going back to that, like what you bring to people that it means something to help be part of something that brings a bit of joy to the town, and seeing the blue and white bunting around the town, and then you're sitting in the cottage with people like with this trophy that they hadn't won a league in 30 years, and like Paul McDermott was playing centre half with us at the time. Like Paul had a wee joke with me, like 'cause Paul would have played in those Cockhill teams whenever I was with Letterkenny, and he kind of said to me, he goes, look, it took you actually playing with me to win a league, like against them. And there was just something special about that year, like, and you can't underestimate what that meant to not only the players but the staff. And Gary and Speedy did an amazing job that season, but also like the players bought into it, and I think like we had great, no more so than at Rovers, we had some really good characters and really just good people involved. And I think like the most special part for me was being able to share it with, like as I said, like two of my best mates, Big Murphy and Croc, like boys that I've been best mates playing football with, kicking lumps out of each other since we were young. Like so, that was special. And if the Aviva had gone any better, it might have been up there with them.
Yeah.
Yeah. Buncrana Hearts winning the league, that was sick.
Was it? Yeah, I think there's something to be said, and there's something different when it's, you know, lads you've grown up with, and you know that local team. It can't be replicated. I suppose final question, Rory. I know you're a big family man, so you know this answer might seem obvious, but who's been the biggest impact in your footballing career, maybe outside of family? Who's sort of been there, supported you, and really had a lasting impression on you?
I've never, honestly, Sean, like that's not something that I've ever had to kind of think of, like because, like, contrary to other parents and stuff, like my mum and dad never really stepped in, like they just enabled it, like if I needed a lift somewhere, I got a lift. If I needed a lift from somewhere, I got a lift. Like there was never any pressure to go play there, go do that, go do this. Like there was none of that. So in terms of coaching as well, like I've had so many coaches. Like I would say probably my friends, like to be honest with you. Like it's the likes of Croc, the likes of Johnny Boner, boys that are my best mates since I was young. Like it's we always kind of had that little thing in us that we were all kind of good at football, but we all kind of pushed each other a wee bit. So like whenever things weren't going well, you could turn around to the boys and say, I'm struggling here, like, or I think that's kind of the influence for me. Like I've never, probably for it's probably my own fault, like that I've had, going back to your point at the start, I've had a lot of clubs where I've worked with a lot of great people, and like I've worked with some really good coaches as well along the way, like, and those coaches ultimately they do shape you. They really do. Like my time at Letterkenny, Anthony, Eamon, Tony shaped me, 100% shaped me as a man playing football, because they kind of gave me that belief where I was going into games then going, I'm the best keeper in this league. Even if I wasn't, I was going in thinking I was. And that, like, if you have that kind of belief in yourself, you carry that into games, like, and that's where, like, it's there hasn't really been one steady influence throughout, but certainly, like, I've picked up so much from really good people in the game, like, and I suppose I'm very, very fortunate for that as well. And like, I joke about my time at Institute. Like, I had 2 spells at Institute. One spell lasted 6 months because I got turfed out at Christmas, and in the second spell, I trained for 6 months and the league didn't go ahead. Like, but getting to actually be in as a different age of a player and as a senior player, like, you end up actually trying to influence young players. And I think, like, whenever me and you work together, I always just tried to not lead by example, but even just try and instill wee things the way Jared Doherty would have done with me, or the way that, like, I would have been learning growing up, like, with different players and stuff, and just standards. Like, so to answer your question in the most roundabout way, I don't have like one major influence, like, but I've been very, very fortunate to work with some brilliant players and work with some, like, brilliant coaches, and they all kind of play their own wee part, like, you know.
Yeah. No, listen, Rory, I think that's a good note to end it on. I really, really, as I say, I really, really appreciate you taking the time out of your busy and hectic Dubai life to do this. So, listen, we'll see maybe down the line. Might get you back on. And yeah, no, I really appreciate that, Rory. Okay.
Thanks a million for having me, Sean. Really appreciate it, and I'll be listening in to future episodes as well. Keep up the great work, sir.
Perfect, I appreciate it. Right, folks, that's another episode of the Friel Goalkeeper podcast. Make sure to like, share, and subscribe, and keep an eye out for more episodes. All right.